Welcome back to more Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Last time, we made it through Forgo Horns, so this time, we're moving on to Forgo Wasteland. Alright, so there are 49 pieces of Leon's soul to find here, which conveniently would put us at 249 if we found everything up to this point, meaning we would be one short to actually go to the ending of this mode, or of this area. Again, very clever to force you to go through all the stages at least once, even if you've collected everything very diligently. Even though each area of the Isolated Isles stages is basically one screen of a main stage, except for the last screen, which typically is an original area that kind of fits in with the aesthetic of the rest of this world. At least this is a fairly large area, compared to some of the ones we've seen so far. I talked about it a little bit before, but it is a little bit different actually going through extra mode in this game. Something else I realized is different compared to other extra modes is there's no time limit. I want to say extra mode and adventure had not a time limit, but like a timer to keep track of how fast you made it through the mode. But yeah, that's actually kind of a staple of the series, so this kind of goes against that expectation. To be fair, it wouldn't be the best indication of how well you're going through it, because these are a lot shorter than the actual main stages. It's not like a proper time attack mode, if that makes sense. But yeah, like Meta Nightmare, I want to say had a timer for each like section of Superstar Ultra. DDD Tour and Triple Deluxe I'm pretty sure did as well. That looks like it goes to the end of the stage, so we'll worry about that a lot later. For now, I remember one very specific thing about this particular area, so let's actually head over here. I'm debating if I want to keep Drill. I might swap over to Bomb, which, to be fair, is not one of my favorite options for this either, but I think will be a little bit better than Drill for what we're about to do. We have a fight with Florina. Again, it really puts into perspective how few mini-bosses there are. Again, if there's any, like, main criticism I actually have for this game, is I do wish there were, like, more new mini-bosses, and also, like, more wild versions of existing ones. Like, we have Wild Bonkers and Wild Frosty and Wild Edge, but there are plenty of mini-bosses that could have been incorporated. But again, this is the first 3D Kirby game. I almost feel like it plays it a little bit safe. And like, I hope if there's more games in this style, which I fully believe there will be, that there will be more like enemy variety. And yeah, lacking copy abilities as well. Some like staples of the series also are missing in this game, which I almost feel like is a missed opportunity. But again, trying to bring a bunch of stuff into 3D might have been a little bit difficult. Like, for example, Ranger, basically, for all intents and purposes, is like laser, except you have a gun instead of like a laser bolt. But kind of serves the same purpose, and I almost feel like, yeah, to a point, certain copy abilities might be a little bit redundant as a result. But yeah, in general, I do still really like this game. It's just there are a couple things that's like, I wish they had done a little bit differently. But yeah, like, I almost am torn about the extra mode implementation, since this is basically the closest we've gotten at this point. To be fair, like Heroes in Another Dimension was post-game and added as a free update, so we could get more modes in the future, in which case I will come back to cover those modes at some point, if that happens. But again, at the time of recording this, there hasn't been any indication of DLC or updates or anything, and this game genuinely feels a lot more complete to begin with. So I'm not really expecting any major content additions, to be honest. But if there are, I will make sure to show them off at a later time. I realize that between when this video is being recorded, or this series is being recorded, and when it actually goes live, This is basically like before the big summer game announcement season. So yeah, who knows? Maybe at like a Nintendo Direct between when this is recorded and when it actually goes live, DLC might be announced. Who knows? In which case, I'd be happy with more content for this game. Again, it feels very complete as is, but hey, more content is always a good thing. Yeah, not having like a time attack system for extra mode and going through much less of each stage. Again, I'm a little bit split on it. On one hand, I actually don't mind going through less of each stage, especially because with how many collectibles there are, you're bound to actually play these stages quite a few times as is. So yeah, I am very torn on it. And also because of the emphasis on actually finding collectibles, like in Heroes in Another Dimension, it almost makes more sense to not necessarily have like a time limit, because you do have to stop and like collect a bunch of stuff throughout each area. So I get why it is different, but yeah, it does stand out because it's so different. I'm trying to think of when the current, like, style of extra mode started being added to Kirby. I want to say it was with Superstar Ultra. It had a very distinct, like, style with, like, the time attack system and, like, specific story elements that were recurring through multiple extra modes up till, like, Star Allies. Star Allies still had them to a point, but it was a little bit different. Also, most extra modes are non-canon. Not that Kirby canon is exactly airtight, to be honest. But in general, I almost feel like, yeah, a lot of the extra modes are kind of like just little optional, like, bonus modes that don't necessarily tie into, like, main story aspects of the series. So yeah, this is probably the first time in a long time that an extra mode, or first time in a long while or at all, that an extra mode has actually been integral to the story. You know, we got it to be continued. We are actively trying to save Leon. Unless you count Heroes in Another Dimension as an extra mode, which I kind of don't because it's all original stages. I also very much prefer this way of going about an extra mode, partly because Heroes in Another Dimension, as fun as that mode was, because it was actually shockingly difficult given how Star Allies was a pretty breezy game to get through. I actually didn't really like the aesthetic choices in that mode, so using actual main stages, and yeah, combining the two modes has actually I actually think that's a really good call. Yeah, the aesthetic in Heroes in Another Dimension wasn't great, so yeah. We still have the kind of like void-like atmosphere that's kind of been recurring in the series for a while. It kind of started with Return to Dreamland, where you had like the like dimensional, I want to say null space, but I think that's Pokemon. But yeah, you had like the other dimension where you had these little like short stages to collect things in, like with a mini boss. And I'm pretty sure that, yeah, that's kind of been a recurring like theme through a lot of the modern Kirby games. It's like that kind of aesthetic. I missed a plant. I was like, what am I missing? Again, this being the second time I've played this stage, I kind of don't recall where everything is. So that should be the last cluster up there, I hope. If it's not, then I'm actually missing something, which is not good. This is a fairly small area, so I'm not even sure where I would be missing something, which is why it'd be bad if we were. But we're not missing anything, so let's move on. One really specific thing that I wish had also been done slightly differently was aesthetic copy abilities, where you could basically choose like the power of one ability, but like with the costume of another. I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing to add in future like iterations of this system. I do feel like the evolution system is actually really promising, and I hope more Kirby games do this. Because it is nice to actually have, like, here's a copy ability, and now it's, like, way more powerful. So it kind of prevents, like, early game power-ups from being eclipsed by late game ones. Again, I think of, like, Kirby Superstar, we're at a point, as soon as, you know, Plasma becomes readily available in stages, it's like, why would you use anything else? It's extremely overpowered. Actually, I know why you would not use Plasma. It's to not give your hand horrible cramps because of having to, like, rotate the D-pad constantly. So that's the actual answer of why would you not use Plasma. I can say that I've definitely not felt the best after going through, like, True Arena and Superstar Ultra from having to, like, rotate the D-pad constantly. Interesting that the change in music from the back side of the mall actually affects the invincibility theme. I wasn't actually aware of that. Nice little detail. We're supposed to use Bomb, but we have a Laser Blaster. We don't need to swap over. Again, Space Ranger is a power-up that's actually kind of, like, overlooked, I think. And I say this as someone who 100% overlooks it myself. If you fully charge it, it is very powerful. I just tend to not like abilities that you have to charge up for a long time, so even though it's very good, I tend to not use it. You know, more immediate results from something like, you know, a fully charged hammer or fully charged sword swing and things like that. But again, it is still a very viable power-up, and I have seen a lot of, like, speedrun type tactics that actually do use Space Ranger because it is so efficient. Alright, so we have another Tortilding. Again, I just really like the name. Very clever. Another Hedgehog. I do feel like having so many original enemies is actually nice, but it also creates a situation where I genuinely don't remember most of the enemy names. Something I've actually noticed, I think is actually really good, is with the figurines. Typically, characters and elements that are not in other games have bios, but not everything has a bio. And I think in a lot of cases it makes sense, you know, give the new enemies and characters bios to give you some idea of, like, what they're like. Alright, so we have another set of soul pieces here. Not done yet. We should be getting close, though. Yeah, it makes sense to have the bios more leaning towards new characters. You know, like a Waddle Dee is like, you know what a Waddle Dee is like, so you don't really need an extensive bio for them. But yeah, like the new enemies, and also the copy abilities typically have bios because you need to know how to control them, and it is actually really weird to me that there's no pause screen implementation, and instead you simply have to collect the figure and it'll usually give you some idea of how to actually perform, like, a special attack. Again, it's a little clumsy and it's kind of out of place considering most Kirby games are really good about telling you all the abilities you have. But to be fair, they are a lot more, like, straightforward. Like, you know, you have a charge variant and, like, a non-charged variant for most cases. You have some abilities that have special properties, but in general, most abilities are controlled fairly consistently. Alright, so moving on to the next area. Luckily, we don't have to go through the dark area for this Isolated Isles variant. We have to be careful, though, because there's a lot we could miss on this little cliffside. You're supposed to use Needle for that, but I guess you don't need it. It's kind of a weird choice, actually, to have this section where you're clearly supposed to use Needle, but the current isn't actually strong enough to push you back. Yeah, kind of a unique choice there. Again, Kirby games usually are pretty easygoing, so I'm not overly shocked, but I just kind of wanted to see if it was possible without actually swapping power-ups, because I kind of want to try Space Ranger. I don't know how good it will be against Silly Dillo, to be honest, because of having to charge up a bunch, but if we can actually land a fully charged shot, like while he's doing, like, the dance attack, that would be very good. I think I have shown it off a little bit, but basically the way this works is it creates this huge like energy field that does continual damage as long as it's like on screen. So this will just kind of shred through bosses' health bars if set up properly. I remember when I first got through here, I really overthought this section. I thought it was going to be like you have to break these blocks temporarily and then get the scissor lift over here to hit the switch. It's a lot simpler than that. Just hit the switch. Just ditch the scissor lift entirely. We're at 30 out of 49, which doesn't feel great, to be honest. I feel like we're missing stuff. To be fair, I tend to feel like I'm missing stuff in most games with collectibles. By the way, have I ever shown off the charged, like, jump attack with this? Well, this looks dangerous. Will this platform break? It doesn't break until you collect those, okay. Now I'll break that. I hope nothing was on there, like in the background, otherwise we would have missed it. I just feel like I'm missing something. Well, we are missing one thing up here, I guess. Another piece there, and yep, we actually weren't missing anything, so that's good. So, one more area before the boss, and yeah, this is like an original area. Hidden block there, I assume this is the rare stone. Again, we've only missed one rare stone here actually, and that was in Forgo Bay. Again, still don't know where that would be. I spoke too soon about there not being a dark area, I guess. This'll be fun. We're getting fire. Oh, this is a little bit different. Instead of being like a light bulb, we have lanterns instead. I like this atmosphere actually. As someone who definitely played this, but kind of forgot it between like completing the game and starting this Let's Play. I kind of forgot what this area entailed. There's just a very unique atmosphere in this game, and I really hope more Kirby games. Actually, no, I take that back to some extent. I wish more games in general would try very experimental, like, set pieces. Things that are like, wait, this is still a Kirby game, right? Because this is one of those set pieces that's like, I feel like some games have kind of experimented with, like, I almost want to say like Subspace Emissary and Super Smash Bros. Brawl had stuff like this with, like, you know, underground, like, exploration type areas that are very like atmospheric, but not a ton of games feel like they go for like atmosphere like this. And I think it's actually really cool, especially when it happens in a game like Kirby, where you may not actually be expecting it to the same levels, like, you know, like a Tomb Raider, for example. Like, you know, you'd expect to go through like a sort of cavernous, like, underground area, a game like that, or like Uncharted, but, you know, throw this into like Kirby, and then it feels really unexpected. So yeah, I do hope more games experiment with like tone and like set pieces, because again, this game definitely takes a lot of risks, and again, it actually really caught me off guard, because again, I remember feeling like the game was feeling a little bit safe at first, and then, yeah, you get like, I want to say Wandaria remains, and then the game just kind of doesn't let up from there in terms of like set pieces, and then yeah, the entire like Lab Discoverer onwards is just like incredible. Some of the best Kirby, but again, the only thing that stops me from being like, this is my favorite Kirby game, is I do wish the really cool elements were more like evenly distributed throughout the story, instead of being kind of like backloaded into the final act. Well, that's unfortunate. We are missing one, and I don't know where it is. I have zero idea of where this could be. It's probably in a really dark area where you just would barely miss it. Or I don't think there's anything like under these crumbly paths or anything like that. I don't think they're that mean. Nothing up here, just checking, not grabbing the warp star yet, because we definitely don't want to head over to the next area just yet. Yeah, areas like this, it's like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of places for it to even be. So So let's look around a little bit and see if we can find anything. I almost feel like it might have to do with like the spinning platform, like, you know, it might light up something. But we went through there already. Like, oh wow, how did I miss that? I have no clue how I missed that. Anyway, we found it, so we're good to go. Reminder, you can hold the attack button when doing the Dragonfire air attack in order to kind of extend your flight, which is really good for getting across gaps. Again, it's a little bit slower, but you do have a lot more control over it, so it's kind of a trade-off. In this game, I actually don't do the dash attack very often, so I don't mind it that much. Alright, so next up is Silly Dillo. Are we not given power-ups for this? Oh, they're just up here. Ranger and Fire, both good options. I was talking a little bit about trying this with Ranger. So I think I'll actually give it a try. I don't think I've ever used Ranger in a boss other than Claraline. The armor-plated illusion, Silly Dillo. Phantom Silly Dillo, more specifically. Wow, that did 0 damage. Yeah, the gimmick of Ranger is you basically have to charge it up, but if you can charge it up, that happens. You just take a huge chunk of its health bar out. So yeah, much more like defensive strategy. One thing I haven't really mentioned a whole lot that I probably should have is I almost feel like the characters emote really well in this game, compared to like other Kirby games. Oh, he doesn't stagger against the wall. I forgot about that. I don't know if he eventually will, or if that's just not something that'll happen in this version of the fight. Yeah, he just switches to a different attack, so that's fine. Yeah, basically just charge up. Let him whiff the cage swipe and then charge up and just let loose this huge energy blast. Overall, not too difficult. We should be on to phase 3 before too long. Probably one more shot. I'm really curious to see how this goes. Oh, there's a Sandstorm now. Does he take less damage when doing that attack? Kinda looked like it. This is supposed to make it a little bit tougher, but it's actually not that much more difficult. Okay, that did not go as I was hoping. You can still charge it up less, obviously. It doesn't do as much damage, but it's kind of good to charge up just a little bit if you can. Like so. Yeah, maybe it does less damage during the spin attack, which would make sense. A lot of bosses in this game work that way when they're doing, like, they have some invincibility, but yeah, even then, with invincibility, you still take damage, which is actually kind of nice. Alright. Okay, dodging again. Again, luckily not having to worry about doing this fight without taking damage, because that would be awful, to be honest. As much as I struggle with the regular Silly Dillo fight, I do not need to worry about doing this damage list. Alright, moving on to the cage attack, which is great. I definitely feel like that would have gone a little bit smoother with Fire, but overall not bad. Got a little turned around and definitely struggled from time to time, but overall not bad. Got all 49 pieces. I also found the rare stone. strong-armed illusion, Phantom Goromondo. This illusory beast was created with powerful psychic energy in a realm of dreams. It's not the real Goromondo, just a phantom made of negative thoughts, but still incredibly strong. Since it's based on memories of the real Goromondo, it can't resist a fruity snack. Again, it's very clever game design, but also slightly upsetting that there's just like one sliver to go. We could collect one and we'd be good to go, but we will be collecting them all just for the completion of this area. There's only one spot left other than the final, the Lab Discoverer equivalent, essentially. That actually took a bit of time, so let's head over to Wild D Town. And I think we have time for one challenge. I think we did all of them in Landaria, so let's move on to Winterhorns. Clutter Needle, yeah, sure. Roll up and throw. Clutter Needle Trial. I struggled with this a lot. I was having trouble lining up throws on my original playthrough, so let's see how this goes. Basically, my advice would be to roll up to the very end and then release. If you release too early, you won't actually throw it very far. Also, the target time for this is 1:20, which is actually pretty long. One of the longer, like, non-just combat arena ones we've seen so far. And I feel like it's pretty obvious why, because of just the way this is, like, laid out. That it's a little bit, like, more time-consuming, having to just, like, wait for all the enemies to spawn in. Again, very clever. These do kind of have the same energy as the other dimension stuff in Return to Dreamland, which I talked about, I think, recently in this playthrough, being reminded of that a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of comparable. The little challenges that kind of test different copy abilities, like the time trials in Return to Dreamland. And Dream Collection also had a bunch of unique challenges too, which was a lot of fun, actually. "11 seconds to spare." We actually got through that pretty well. Considering how much I botched that originally, that went pretty smoothly. Alright, so there's really not much left to go, so let's head over to the Isolated Isles. And next time we'll be exploring the Forgo Zone. So thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for more Kirby and the Forgotten Land.